Welcome to Sales Talk Tuesday. This week we're going to take a look at, I'm going to focus primarily on a real estate transaction, but I'm wanting you to be open to realize sales is sales is sales. So as you're going through things, you've got to look at it from a client's perspective. And this week what we're going to talk about, a friend of mine sold a house back in May, listed it in May, closed in 3 days, and on that very same street that he lives on, or he did live on, 5 other houses sold. So that's why you have the title this week talking about leaving basically $2.2 million on the table. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this inward and take it totally from a client's perspective. But let me give you a little bit of a background first. The gentleman that I'm talking about, he and his wife were in the middle of, they're starting to retire. It's over. You know, they're going into their twilight years. They've got a beautiful lake home that they've built. And this is one of their assets that they wanted to get a lot of their cash out of for retirement. So it also, I was in the middle of developing a training for a real estate team. So I was very in tune with what was going on and how you look at comps and how you determine what prices are. So as we go through this, I'm going to give you the story, but I want to give it to you strictly from the client's perspective, but I'm going to help look at it and explain why the agents messed up. The reason why people don't refer other people is because they don't have a good experience with that person. And so many times as a sales rep, what we do is we get, well, one of my streams just went down, have no idea which one. I'll fix that later. So what we're going to look at here is, and I apologize for the technical issue, but it went down right in the middle of it. So what we're going to look at here is one transaction, but by the agents doing such a poor job and living up to the expectations that most clients have for agents, they didn't get the additional business. So let's take a look at that. So, let me see here. Let's look at the inventory, where I'm getting these numbers from. What you're going to see here is the inventory for the street that we're speaking of. So you've got 6 houses. I've ranked them down the side by the niceness of it. That doesn't mean that the number 5th ranked or 6th ranked house is bad. It just means some of these others have had updates. They've taken the basement and made it into a nice entertainment center. They've done a lot of different things to make that house stand out a little bit. Now the home that we're going to ultimately focus on is right there. You see number 3, it says Atlanta Communities. It was $439,000, and you see that it sold at $88 a square foot. Compared to the others, it's next to last. Now, I'm telling you this because he originally got information from a real estate agent off of Facebook, and they came in anywhere from $439 to $459 on the price of the home based on the comps that they had run, and they gave him out of his survey. But he ended up going with a real estate agent that knew the neighborhood. They had lived there. Everybody knew who they were. They didn't really market themselves a lot. They just were active in the neighborhood, so you knew who they were. They no longer live in the neighborhood, but they're still very familiar. So the agent that they went with came in and told them to come in at $439. Now Jim and myself had a conversation about that, and I'm like, man, I have to be honest with you. I think you've priced your home too low. Everything I'm seeing, you should be around $460 or maybe even a little bit higher so you have some negotiations. Well, he went with the real estate agent, but he and I did have a conversation. We went through some things. Hey, why are you selling? What's your motivation? And like I said, his motivation was he's retiring. So is he in a great hurry to sell the home? Not really. The house isn't finished up in Tennessee is where he's moving. So he's not in a hurry, but they priced it to sell, which was fine. But the problem you run into is when you price it to sell, everybody wants a deal. So on the other side, you've got an agent who's telling that customer, hey, we can probably get this cheaper than $439. So if you're starting at the bottom and then you have another agent who's good at what he's doing, he's going to try to negotiate for the buyer much better than the seller. So as you can see here, it comes up to 2.6 million. And the reason where I got the 2.1 million is I subtracted the 439. At least that agent got one of them. But you'll see here, every single one it's a different agent. So every one of these agents left a lot of money on the table. So the listing customer, all right, let me go back. All right, listing customer thoughts. And here's, everybody always asks, how do I overcome objections? Well, the first thing is, I don't care what industry you're in, sooner or later it's going to narrow down to 5 or 6, maybe 10 different objections. They may change the color, they may, something may come up that you're not really familiar with, but all in all, you're going to get, hey, it's too expensive, or hey, this is more house than I need, or whatever it is. And you should learn and think where that customer is going to come from. And with that, I mean, you look right here, what difference does it make? All you guys do is put a sign in the front yard and put it on MLS. That's what your typical listing customer thinks. Then you've got, hey, 6% is a lot of money to sell a home. Let's look at it. Just the $439,000. If you sell that home for $439,900, that's a $13,000 commission. That's a lot of money. And in this case, the house listed and sold in 3 days. My house is worth a lot more than that. So many times, think about it. When you're buying something, you're trying to get the price down. So you're going to find everything that's wrong with that product you're buying. If you're buying a car, you're going to talk about the things that you don't like about the one that you're looking at. If you're buying a house, you're looking at all the negatives so that you can negotiate the price down and puts more money in your pocket. Now, if you're the seller, you need to really look at your home as if you were, if I was a listing agent. Now keep in mind, I've never sold real estate, but I've sold pieces of my own real estate, and I've worked with several agents in the field. So I have a pretty good understanding of what happens to them. But when you go in and you do a listing, to me, the first thing you should do is go around the house yourself, look at it from a buyer's agent perspective. In other words, look at that home for all the things that you're going to find wrong with it to help your buyer get a lower price. And the reason why you're doing this is you want to take your seller around the home and say, all right, I now want you to put your buyer's eyes on this thing. You've got a reason why you're moving. I get it. You've got a number that you think this house is worth. I get it. What I want you to do, though, you're in the middle of looking at another home. So when you're having that critical eye looking at that other home, I want to walk you around. I want you to look at your home and say, okay, is the kitchen dated? Does the bathroom need updated? There's a lot of different things that you have two options. You can spend the thousands of dollars and update your kitchen, update your bathroom, or you can factor that in to knowing when it comes to negotiation time, you may have to drop your price some. So I truly believe that listing agents, where they make mistakes, is they don't interact with the customer and get them to a point. It's great to show comps. That's fine. That's wonderful. That's great. But I've seen a lot of houses sell for more than what the comps say they're worth. One of my neighbors actually sold their house for more than it appraised for. And the reason, when they're doing that appraisal, there's upgrades. There's different things that people put in a home that makes it worth more, and the buyer side is willing to pay for it. So you've got to get your seller in the mode of, hey, what's going on with my house? Now, we're going to go in more detail of the customer that I'm talking about because he had done the updates. His house wasn't outdated. So those are things that shouldn't count against him. He should be getting some premiums, not discounts. Now, you look here, what makes one agent different than another? Oh, my goodness. I've had some good agents. I've had some bad agents. I have to admit, generally speaking, the ones that never ever spend money on pictures, I pity them, because unless you really have an eye or an ability to take good pictures and being able to edit them and tell that story of the house, you probably need to leave that up to the professionals, just like people who try to sell their home. I mean, it's funny, in real estate, you have a thing called for sale by owner, and 87% of those homes ultimately are sold by an agent. And those for sale by owner people think it's going to be so easy. Well, it's not. Selling a home, there's a lot more to it than just hanging the shingle outside and putting on MLS. You've got to do marketing. You've got to get people interested. You've got to be prepared to defend your price when you're talking to that buyer's agent. So that is what I expect when I'm working with a listing agent. I don't want you to just you get an offer and drop price. I want you to defend. I want you to point out the things that make my house worth more than what this other person is telling me it's worth. So, things that go into that price. Here's a list. There's many, many, many more, but you got square footage, lot size, schools, the neighborhood, curb appeal, how big's the lot, the decor. I mean, I'm telling you right now, if you go into a house and it's poorly decorated or it's not clean, it sends a message to the buyer that you haven't taken care of your house. But if you're decorated, my grandmother, when she was selling her home, it was decorated like, well, probably the 1950s, 1960s. It doesn't bode well for getting someone to pay a premium for your home, because you're banking on that person who walks through that house to have the vision of what their house is going to look like once you're moved out. So you've got to be conscientious of those things. The other thing you got to look at is how big of a hurry are you in? If you're selling, I would say the busiest time of year, depending on the market, just your typical residential neighborhood, is probably the summertime. And the reason for that is people are trying to get moved so their kids can, number one, if you got a good school system, people are going to want to get in there. And if you're trying to get out, that's a better time for you to be selling, because people are going to pay that premium to get moved before school starts. And there's many other things depending on the market. I have a couple agents that I work with that are at a 30A. They sell high-end real estate beachfront property. That's where they focus. And that's a total different market. But I'm wanting you to realize a lot of things go into price. Should you go along and educate your customer? Absolutely. I have call centers, and when I'm buying software, I want them to kind of give, people who develop software look at things a little bit differently than those of us that are running the actual call center. So they're going to see things probably before I can, because they know what that technology can do before I know it can do it. So I look to them for that guidance. I want them to learn my business, and then I want them to make a recommendation, not based on price, but the efficiency of improving my product to my customers. Because in the end, I don't really care what they do. I care what I do for my customer, because that's who pays the bills. Same thing when you're looking at that house, you've got to get your seller in the psyche of being ready to sell that house for a certain price. And then you've got to be able to defend it. So this is the one that I'm familiar with, and I want to paint this. Those of you who are real estate agents or any salesperson, keep this in mind. Everyone thinks people are in sales, they're going to lie, cheat, and steal to get their commission. That's what people think, especially if they're not salespeople. And that's really just not true. Most salespeople I know, they take good care of their customers. They're not looking to sell that one house. They're looking to sell these people 3 and 4 and 5 houses through the years. They're looking at it as a career. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, that gives you an incentive to do right by your customer. But I want you to look at this, because I think this is what cost the couple that was selling this home in the neighborhood, was exactly what you're about to see. Remember, we talked about, in my opinion, and again, I don't know anything. Opinions are, they're like anything. Everybody's got one, but no one really knows if it's right or wrong until you put it to the market. And based on the other homes and the square footage, I think I may have leaned more to the right side. But here's what I want you to look at. They put the house listed at $439,000. If they were in a hurry to get out, like if they were moving and it was job transfer and they were trying to bring the family back together, okay, fine, you're going to price it to sell and get in, get out, and keep moving. The days on the market before an offer, there were 8 showings, and they got an offer on the 3rd day. Now, just to kind of paint the picture, and I can tell a story because they stayed with us in their transition during the move. He was in Tennessee with his daughter when he got the call about the offer. And the offer that came in was $419,000, which is $20,000 less than the $439,000. I know we can all do the simple math. It irritated him. 2 reasons probably. One, I had talked to him about I thought the house was too cheap, and I told him I thought it would sell pretty quickly because of the price. Guess what? That's what happened. Doesn't make me right. Could have been a coincidence. But it really irritated him when the agent came in and said, "Hey, they're looking at houses in the front of the neighborhood for $419,000, and I think you need to take this offer. You may not get another one." Well, here's the problem. Number one, these agents, they lived in his neighborhood. They live there. They know that the homes in the front of the neighborhood are nowhere near what's happening in the back of the neighborhood. The size, there's just a lot of things that were different. That was the front end of the neighborhood getting people in. The back end has some nicer homes. Not a whole lot nicer, but nicer than, matching the price of the front home. So this agent was really kind of irritated when they didn't take the offer. But Jim told me what he did. I mean, when he hung up from them, he was livid. And keep in mind, I'm a sales guy, and I'm running this thing from a sales perspective. I want an agent to truly learn how to sell. Nothing more irritating. You get an agent, and they take you around. They never ask you the questions that you need to make sure that are must-haves versus like-to-haves. They take you around and each house. Now, what do you think? It's back to the attorney thing. They're not providing the guidance that you want them, to nudge you over. Now, some do. Don't give them, I know there's some watching this right now saying, there's no way I tell my client what to do. Great, proud of you. And base it on something. But in the end, you've got a negotiation going on here, and your agent just rolled over and played dead. So the agent's advice, take the offer. You may not get another one. It's not that much less, which it's actually $20,000 less on the listing price. And they're looking at a home in the front of the neighborhood that's, they're basing that on 419. They're thinking that buyer's going to go away. Well, I'm going to give you a hint. They didn't fold. The agent didn't get what they wanted. Jim came back, said, I'm not taking less than 439. That's it. He didn't need to sell the home. He was fine. So when they went back, the people said, okay. And they took it at 439. Now, it ultimately went to, I think, like 438.5, and that's because they had to throw in something to take care of whatever. It was still 439. But guess what that did for the agent? Do you not think that Jim, when he was talking to his neighbors of the experience that he had, he was totally disappointed? And here's, again, put your hat on. When you're on the sell side, you're trying to get as much as you can. When you're on the buy side, you're trying to get it at the best price you can. Totally normal. There's nothing wrong with it. But if I'm paying somebody $13,000, I expect you to not just roll over on the price. Either A, you've priced it wrong to begin with, which shows me you don't know what you're doing, or B, you just are weak. To me, you need to go back to that agent and say, hey, wait a minute. You are sitting here comparing this house to that house, and we're talking apples and oranges. And so you point out these things because here's what I want you to always bet on as a salesperson, and it goes into the sales process. If you are someone who's selling insurance, or you're selling cell phones, or you're selling software, and you're sitting across from someone who's truly not the decision maker, you have to get this person prepared to go to the decision maker. Number one, try your best to get the decision maker in there, and we'll cover that in another show. But your job as the salesperson is to prepare the person that you're sending off out into the wild blue yonder to get them to commit to buying something. Your job is to give them the sales pitch, is to get them ready to deliver something without you there. So as a realtor, if I definitely was Jim's realtor, I would have pointed out not only the size of the homes, but the age of the homes, the updates that came with the home. There were so many things that they had added that was different than the home that they were comparing it to in the front of the neighborhood. So as a salesperson, your job, and this is where we talk about, do you be aggressive or not? You have to decide, are you going to be aggressive or not? I look to you in a sales environment to be aggressive. So what I would expect you to do is you teach that agent how to sell that home to those people as is. I want my price for that home. And we negotiate from there. But here's what I want you to look at what really happens. Here's the impact of the advice. The client's only going to receive $393,860 if he took the agent's advice versus the $412 that he had budgeted for. That's $18,800 less. Yes, they dropped the price of $20,000, but that also lowers the commission going out to the brokers. The client's expectation was, I'm expecting $439. I'm expecting you to fight for me. So, like I said, convince the, you got to give them why that's worth it. You got to convince them on it. So here's what I want you to look at is the impact of the agent. So if Jim had dropped the price, he loses $18,800. The agent, on the other hand, only loses roughly $600, because what's happened here is this: you drop 20 grand, they're only getting 3% of that 20 grand, so it's $600 is what they lose. Now, long term, here's what it cost them. They lost $2,188,000 because they couldn't go to someone in that neighborhood. So let's look at it. I'm going to go on and put this out here. How do you get the 2.2 million? Let me get to this. All right. Here we go. Once you've listed a home, the odds are there's going to be others selling in a neighborhood. I'm not talking about just canvassing the neighborhood. I'm talking about at least canvass near the home. But when you do that, you go and you knock on the door and you go, hey, I just listed Jim's home. Would you like for me to keep you updated on the status of it? And most people are going to say what? Oh, absolutely. So you get their name, their address, their email, and then you say, hey, by the way, were you looking to move? And if they were, then they'll tell you. Or they say, hey, I'm not sure. Then you ask that simple question: what price would motivate you to move? Everybody's got a price. And that way you've got some relationship with them. Now, if you say you're going to follow up, follow up. So with Jim, it would have been listed. He would have put the sign out, and all of a sudden it's sold in 3 days. Great news, makes you look like a hero. If you're selling it at list price, it makes you even more like a hero. But if you have that out there at $439 and you sold that house at $419, that's going to make the neighbor wonder, are you worth what they're paying you for? Either way, do you think Jim had that conversation with some of those neighbors, letting them know what a lousy job their agent had done? Yes, ultimately he got $439, but was that because of the agent or was that because of him? And that's what you've got to always look at is you may think you've won, but you haven't. If you do a lousy job, if all you do is be the low-cost provider, then why did they need you to begin with? So keep that in mind. Now, you'll see here too, demonstrate your marketing plan. Every one of these homes, all I saw one where you could text and get some information. I saw one where you have the sign and everybody goes to their website and everybody goes to Zillow. But something I did for a friend of mine who lived over in South Carolina, and it's kind of funny. He goes, I don't think that YouTube helped at all. But he had a very nice lake home, and they were retiring and they were moving to the northern part of the state, and it was a lovely lake home. Little dated, but not much. It was a very nice home. The problem was the market had fell out. This was 2008, 2009. I mean, the market had just fallen out, and so their price was way higher than what Zillow showed. So they would show the home and it very rarely sold. So at that time I had a drone. So I took my drone, I flew it over there, I flew it over their house, I did a walkthrough with their home, and then I put it using their address on YouTube. Now, I don't know if it helped. Here's what I do know. It sold 3 weeks later, and his exact words, Byron, I'm not sure anybody ever went and looked at it on YouTube, but when I went to the YouTube channel, there were over 9,000 views. And I didn't do anything to market the YouTube. All we did was put it in the MLS listing. It was, if they took a flyer from the box outside, it said to go to YouTube. Every agent, a minute ago I talked about pictures. Yes, you need great pictures, especially when you're in the $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 up to $1 million, $5 million homes. You need good pictures. And yes, it's coming out of your commission. I get it. But here's something I want to tell you from a video perspective. One of my friends that works down in 30A, he actually, when he first got out into the market in 30A, he would video with his iPhone. He took some of the worst videos that you've ever seen because it just looked like some guy. He wasn't overproducing it. He was simply selling the home using video. So what happened? Guess what? He goes, He puts them on there, he got a ton of views, and it sold a ton of properties. And I'm saying that to say this: don't get hung up on if everything's beautiful. Here's what they're going to see when you walk through that house with your iPhone and you're talking about the kitchen and you're talking about the view out the backyard and you're talking about all these things. The people that are watching that video, number one, they're interested in the home or they wouldn't have gone there. Number two, they're getting it from a natural perspective. It gives them a chance to see and put themselves in that home. Not a house, but a home. So when you're a realtor and you're going through there for free, you can take your cell phone, and if you're an agent that doesn't have a cell phone, you're going to starve to death anyway because it's just the way it is. But you walk through, you film a beautiful, the kitchen, the master bedroom, the fans are turning, the stove is on, but you're showing them what it's going to be like to live there. And you put it on Facebook and you put it on YouTube and you get it out there for people to see and make it to where when they're driving by on a weekend, I don't have time to schedule an appointment. I want to know what that house looks like, not just the beautiful pictures. And that's where a video comes in. Another thing, offer to update the status. Here's the thing, you've got their contact information. And when you drop them an email and you're kind of giving them an update, hey, we've got it listed, the sign's out front, we've got it in MLS for this price, and all of this is public knowledge. You're not disclosing anything. And then you drop a link to YouTube and you're showing them what it looks like on the inside of their home. Now they get to compare their home and say, oh, well, I probably need to update this. I could get more money than that. And it gets the customer thinking, or your potential customer thinking. None of the homes so far have I seen on YouTube, and I would do it by the address so that it's easy to find, because it's not going to come up if they just search wherever. If you go to YouTube, put in that address, that's the address you need to call that channel. When you're done, obviously take the channel down. So these are things that are going to differentiate you from your competition. And you need to be able to answer that. What makes you different? How do you differentiate yourself from your competition? If you've got a marketing plan, describe that marketing plan. Be careful of the hoax. There's a lot of training that I've seen out there online, and they give you a lot of gimmicks. Avoid the gimmicks, ladies and gentlemen. The people can pick up on it. And it's kind of funny. One of the organizations, they have this, quote, magic question. And I admire the agents because they put it out there. I mean, they put the, quote, magic question, but they're doing it live. And a lot of times these customers are just telling them no. And I want to give you a hint, salespeople. If you're asking questions and you think it's the biggest thing and it's great, and you're asking, because I'm telling you, I've been in the field, so I've had trainers come in and they give you this magic question. And if you'll say this every time, it'll give you the answer you're looking for. Be careful of those. And here's what I mean by that. If you ask the question and you ask it perfectly and you keep getting answers that you're not expecting, that should tell you you're saying something you're not intending to say. So as a salesperson, always be conscientious of that. And I won't actually bring on the recordings, but I'll tell you where to go find them. And I'm going to cover words mean things. I want you to focus when you're interacting with a customer. The only thing you got is you. How you present, the questions you ask, how you tie it back to that customer. It's the same thing here. You've got, when that agent was telling him to drop 20 grand, it was nothing to them. Think about it. 3 days on the market, so they don't have to do any marketing, no open houses, nothing. All they had to do was put up the sign, put it on MLS, and voila, it's sold. And you drop 20 grand, and I lose 600, whoop-de-doo. For 3 days work, 13,000, I'll take it all day long. So, here's the agent's failure. They lived up to the low expectations. Remember earlier I talked about the customers. The listing customer has ideas, and they really do think. I'm telling you, I've had agents. One of them honestly took a picture with my vacuum cleaner in it. And I didn't mind. I mean, it wasn't a very high-end house, and that's what he told me, actually. He goes, come on, man, it's just a $150,000 house, which, you think that's a little bit offensive? It was. But my point there is, if you're going to be cheap and you're going to take the pictures, at least put some quality into it. Move that toaster. Move that microwave that's on the counter. Make it look good. put out an effort so that your client feels like you're looking out for their best interest. Now, I'm just talking real estate, but it applies to advertising. It applies to everything. Put that little extra in there. Yeah, you may bill for it. So what? Bill. I have no problem with that. But differentiate yourself by being better than your competitor, by bringing something to the table to where they should believe in you. The other failure, priced low, dropped to move, they can't sell. They couldn't sell their way out of a wet paper sack. I'm sorry. I would never use them, and I've had people ask me, and I pretty much tell the truth of the experience that Jim had, because they sell in the neighborhood that I'm in also, and I've had people, hey man, did you know them? I didn't know them. I don't know them. It's not personal with me. And keep in mind, when somebody's selling something, it's not personal. Now, when you're selling your home and you've put all the work and effort into it and you're that seller, yeah, you could get offended pretty easily. But the whole thing, in the end, it's all about business. It has nothing to do but business. If it's personal, they probably shouldn't move. All right. They did absolutely no direct marketing. And what I mean here by press the flesh, they didn't walk to the neighbors. They didn't talk to the neighbors. All they did, sign MLS and drop price. Wow. Woo, that was worth every penny. All right. And that's pretty much it with today's show. What I want you to focus on as we move forward, I want you to send some emails to me, and you can send those to byron@byronlindsay.com, or you can drop it on Facebook or YouTube in the comments section, some things that you would like for me to cover. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'd like for you to subscribe and hit the bell so that I can send you out a notice. Unfortunately, with Facebook, I'm having trouble. I have no idea why the stream stopped. My internet's pretty strong, so I don't know what happened there. I'll continue to figure this thing out. The key to sales is this: protect yourself, protect your client, and give them value for what they're paying for. You're not in this just for the commission, because if you are, you won't survive long. Yes, you may make a lot of money in the beginning, but I've worked with some great companies out there, and the key is to provide great value. In the end, you don't want them focused on what they paid you. You want them focused on what you did for them, how you helped them go through the process to get where they needed to go. Just like I said earlier, got call centers. I buy software. I buy phone equipment. It's not really phone equipment anymore. It's all internet-based. But my point there is this: when they come in, the better salespeople, they're not the cheapest, but they're selling me a product that helps me reach my goals. And that's the same thing that your customer expects of you. So again, I want you to have a great week. It's Tuesday. You know what your goals are. You need to reach them. Please subscribe down below, and see you next Tuesday for Sales Talk Tuesday.